So hello everyone, welcome to our YouTube live chat. We will be here every day taking your questions on big stories of the day. So today we are going to be looking at the arrest of Farooq Abdullah, who's the former Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir. So yesterday the government disclosed that they have detained him under the draconian Public Safety Act, and this has caused a fair amount of controversy because the Public Safety Act is normally something which is used against stone pelters and separatists and people of that nature in the context of Jammu and Kashmir. And the reason why it's considered draconian is because you can be held without a trial for anywhere between up to 3 months going up to 2 years. You are charged from anything to do with threatening the security of the state to threatening the maintenance of public order. And this is given rise to many questions about why someone like Farooq Abdullah, who's 83 years old, he's been a chief minister, he's a member of parliament, he doesn't seem to have visibly at least disturbed the peace. Why is he being put away under the Public Safety Act? And at the moment we don't really have an answer from the government as to why they have chosen to escalate the charge against him, and hence the sort of questions that are coming up. So some of you have already started sending us questions about this and want to know more about the ongoing debate about Farooq Abdullah. Also, just to let you know that you can keep sending in your questions and we'll take them live in the duration of the chat. So one of the questions that is coming from Anurag Chaturvedi is that, is Farooq Abdullah willing to stay silent if left free? Now, of course, we don't know exactly what Farooq Abdullah's position will be, but just to bear in mind that he did give an interview to the media, including to NDTV, while he was in a state of quasi-detention. This was shortly after the declaration or the government's scrapping of Article 370, and he said he was very strongly opposed to it. He says this is going to divide the people of Jammu and Kashmir, and he said he was very upset and emotional about what had happened. So clearly he's an outspoken individual, a politician, and he's well within his rights to speak out as and when the detention is lifted. But that depends, of course, on the government, whether they will allow him to come out of detention, when will they do that, and also will that be with conditions, will there be restrictions imposed on Farooq Abdullah. So that's something that we'll have to wait and see. There's a question from Ulza which says, if political leaders are being detained, what is happening to the normal people in Kashmir? Well, we already know in a sense of what is happening to the ordinary civilian population. We know that there's no detentions going on of the population as a whole. We know that there are figures that are being cited of anywhere between 1,000 to 4,000 people who've been detained. We believe a lot of these are political leaders from the mainstream, as well as a whole lot of other functionaries, for example, members of the Bar Association and so on. The government also claims that they've detained stone pelters, separatists, anyone who could cause trouble. But the ordinary populace is free to move around within certain restrictions, but there is still a communication clampdown. The internet is still not up. Cell phone services have not been restored. So in that sense, while Kashmir is moving back, quote unquote, to some form of normal life, it is still not fully back to what you would call 100% normalcy. Let's keep looking at other questions coming in from you. Now, Imran Shah has pointed out that this law was approved by his father in 1978, in brackets, irony. So this is true. It is in fact the case that this particular law, the Public Safety Act, was brought in by Sheikh Abdullah, Farooq Abdullah's father, when he was Chief Minister. And interestingly enough, this was a law that was brought to prevent timber smuggling. There was a timber mafia that was very active in those days, and this law was brought in to target them. But subsequently, it's been used to actually go after those who would foment trouble. And Farooq Abdullah himself, as Chief Minister, has used this law against separatists to put them away. And now the wheel has come full circle, and he himself finds himself incarcerated under this law. Viraj Singh has a question. He says, is detaining Kashmiri leaders like Farooq Abdullah curbing of freedom of speech and expression? Well, Viraj, it's like this, that look, obviously the use of the law is within the grounds that are permitted by by the law itself. So the police, the state can detain people, can arrest them if they feel that there are sufficient grounds. But here the problem is that we're not entirely clear why these people have been detained or why they've been arrested. The government has come up with no explanation as such, because if you see their pronouncements or if you see their conduct, nothing that they have done or said seems to suggest that they're fomenting public disorder. And I'm talking here specifically about the mainstream politicians, whether it's a Farooq Abdullah or an Omar Abdullah or Mehbooba Mufti. This is why their detentions, their arrest is a continuing cause for concern, and in a way could be seen as curbing their civil liberties and their freedom of speech. So Tayyaba Chaudhary has asked a question: what is the Supreme Court's role in this? If the people of Kashmir, including its leaders like Farooq Abdullah, are leading a detained life without any electronic connectivity, who can regulate or supervise the government's actions in a democracy? Now, Tayyaba, that's a very good question, because in fact, since the abrogation of Article 370 and since the detention of many of these leaders, a number of individuals have gone to the Supreme Court and petitioned both against the detention as well as against the curbs on communication and so on and so forth. The court has so far taken a slightly guarded view on this. They seem to have broadly gone along with the government's arguments that it is important in the interests of national security, in the interests of safety, to place certain restrictions within Jammu and Kashmir. So those petitions are still before the court. Some of those petitions, in fact, had come up yesterday. The court has issued notice to the government. They've asked them to come up with an explanation within a certain stipulated period of time. But the court has said, in an order that they passed yesterday, that whatever restoration of normalcy should happen, and they've said that normalcy should be restored to Jammu and Kashmir, it should be within the ambit of national security. So they have given the government some room there for discretion, and we'll have to wait and see now how the government responds, and indeed whether they actually choose to lift these restrictions. Now, Dhritaraj is asking, what is this draconian law? Please explain. Dhritaraj, if you just tuned in a little earlier, you would have seen that we did in fact go through a little bit of what the PSA, the Public Safety Act is. As I mentioned, it's an act which allows you to detain somebody for anywhere from 3 months to 2 years without a trial. It's a much stronger law than the regular section of the Indian Penal Code, because the IPC doesn't allow you to do that. And it is largely used against those who are believed to be either threatening the security of the state or threatening the maintenance of public order. So it's a law that's really used against those that you might call extremists, separatists, terrorists, stone pelters in the context of Kashmir, people like that. And the fact that it's being used against a mainstream politician is what has become a cause for concern. Right, we have a question from Mansoor Ali Sheikh, who says this shows that the government can go to any extent to silence the voice of the people and those who represent them in the valley. There is no news about this on news channels except a few. Now, Mansoor, I can't confess to have watched the other news channels yesterday when this news broke, but I am fairly confident that this was a big enough story to have been reported on a number of news channels. We also chose to focus on it last night. We did some shows on it. So I think this has got considerable attention, because this is the first time, remember, Mansoor, that the government is actually coming out and telling you under which provisions of the law they've arrested these leaders. So far we didn't know, and there was a lot of speculation about it, but now we know that it is under the Public Safety Act. Okay, let's see now if we have any more questions, and in fact there are a lot of questions but a lot of comments as well. We have a question from someone who's by the user handle a day in the life. He or she is asking, does all this affect the tourism industry? Now obviously at a time like this, yes, tourism has come to virtually a grinding halt in Jammu and Kashmir, because there is still a sort of a shutdown. People are allowed to travel back and forth, but there appears to be a kind of almost civil disobedience by the population of Jammu and Kashmir. They've refused to open shops and establishments except for the most basic. And of course, this is compounded by the fact that mobile communications are down. So this is really not the best time for the economy of Jammu and Kashmir, which is dependent on tourism as well as, of course, the apple trade and so on and so forth. So I think, yes, very much so, this has affected tourism in the state, and it will continue to affect tourism in the state. So that brings us to the end of this question and answer session. We hope you found this interesting. We were talking about the imposition of the Public Safety Act on Farooq Abdullah and the debate that it has stirred, and this is something that is going to continue to be in the news, in the days ahead. So we will try to return to this subject, but do remember that we will keep up this process of engaging with you on YouTube. We'll be doing this every day, so do continue to join us and send in your questions. But for the moment, thanks very much. It was great to chat with you.